the two great dangers facing us in the world today. One's fake chicken, the other's fake news. You'll hear about it right here. Well, I'm Pete, and right next to me is Maggie. So how are we doing today, Maggie?
Fine, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm all right. I've not been eating any fake chicken, so I think I'm going to survive. It sounds pretty disgusting, but we'll talk about that in a second. We've got an article about it. We are Maggie and Pete, and we got a weekly podcast where we talk about things from the point of view of a Christian and conservative, but we'll talk about absolutely anything. But this one, you're in for a bit of a wild ride with the first story, certainly. Now, we're going to bring up an article from The Spectator. This is the one. Here it is, just on the screen with us. You've got a picture there. Let me scroll up a bit so you can see the picture.
I'd say you've just got their legs there, which is horrific. I'm not sure it makes it any better.
I got the chicken and broccoli people duking it out. Let me put the title on the screen. So, what's this all about then? The Clean Meat Revolution, written by Anthony Brown there in The Spectator. But he's highlighting something that's happening. Seems to be something that's already started, but it could get worse or better, depending on your point of view.
Well, it's quite interesting because The Spectator also have a podcast, and I heard this first on the podcast before reading the article. And actually, I would recommend actually listening to that podcast if you find this at all interesting, because it gave us a slightly different perspective about it as well. But it's all about fake meat, and the first ever chicken nuggets, which were not from a slaughtered animal, were produced in Singapore recently, and sold in a restaurant in Singapore. And the meat is cultured. I mean, I'm a scientist, okay, so I do cell culture sometimes, not very much anymore, but where we have like cells in a like a petri dish or something similar, in a flask of some sort anyway, and we grow them, and they're doing something similar, but with chicken.
Yes.
Protein and in a something called a bioreactor, and they've made enough chicken to make it into chicken nuggets.
Yes, it's remarkable, isn't it? I mean, yeah,
it's amazing, actually. I mean,
when you said they were cultured, I thought, I suppose in a way, the chicken nuggets might be cultured. Is it particularly cultured to eat chicken nuggets? Let me just read out the start to this article. It says on the 19th of December last year, some chicken nuggets were sold in a restaurant called 1880. Not the year, that's the name of the restaurant.
I did think that. I thought surely it wasn't 1880.
That is. Yeah, that wasn't me thinking the viewers are going to not get it. I didn't get it when I first looked at it. Yeah, this doesn't sound like a significant turning point in history, but it was. That small plate of chicken nuggets might well have been the start of a major industrial, social, and cultural revolution, one the UK needs to prepare for. I thought it was going to say needs to fear. So it was the first time in history, this Singaporean chicken nugget, that meat that did not come from a slaughtered animal had been sold commercially. It was genuine chicken meat, not a substitute, but it had been cultured from cells in a vat called a bioreactor, as you said earlier. So
it is. I mean, you can't fault it. It is real chicken, in that it's chicken cells or chicken. It is chicken meat, but it hasn't been grown on a chicken. And I have to say, it's funny. I don't eat chicken nuggets. I don't know whether I even think whether I've maybe had like one or two that the kids have had, but I don't think I've ever really eaten chicken nuggets in anger, as it were.
Well, yes. The thing about chicken is that it. Sorry, carry on. Yeah.
What I was going to say is, our children wanted to go to McDonald's. Well, I disowned them after this, to be perfectly honest.
They're not my children if they want to go to McDonald's.
They wanted to go to McDonald's, so I took them to McDonald's. And,
not a sponsor.
And our son wanted to have chicken nuggets, and you could buy 9 for £3.59. Or you could buy 20 for £4.09. He said, I get an extra 11 chicken nuggets for only 50p. So anyway, so we ended up getting 2 of these boxes of 20, and I forsake whatever I might have ordered from McDonald's to have these chicken nuggets so that we could share between us. and they were horrible. The children was like, yeah, they're great, they're really great. I was like, they're really horrible. I really don't like
Yeah.
chicken nuggets.
Yeah,
So so I'm not
yes.
exactly
You're not a
enthused
fan,
by this chicken story, because
even if it tastes exactly the same, you're not going to like. No, what I was going to say is
no, even if
chicken.
it tastes everything.
Chicken is
Yeah, well, the thing
remarkable
is,
for its blandness, isn't it? Really. I mean, but
chicken is just, well, like that, it certainly is bland. I mean, but if you have a whole roast chicken and you've got the legs and you've got
yeah,
the juices coming out and
you've
you've
got all
got
the
the other bits and
juices. Yeah,
pieces,
yeah.
I'm not saying the giblets. I don't eat the giblets, but some people do like that bit too. It's kind of a little bit different than eating chicken nuggets. So
Mm.
now in the I mean, it doesn't really specifically say it. I think in this particular article, but it did mention it on the podcast, is that they can make the meat, they can make the protein, but they're really not able to make the fat, and it's those juices, and it's the fat, and it's the extra bit. You know, you think about like a T-bone steak or something like that. They can't really make the different sort of types of meat, or the different parts that give it that rich flavor. It is chicken, and it does taste. They said it does taste like chicken. It would taste like chicken nuggets, but really, I think that I think certainly in the short term, all they'll be able to do is things like almost like processed meat, like mince for a lasagna, or say chicken for nuggets, or whatever. And I think it's a limitation. But when listening to that podcast, I began to feel a bit scared, I have to say, because it's very much down the whole vegan is best, plant-based is best type route, which I personally don't really subscribe to. I mean, you've probably got even more experience than I have, because you've really been investigating like a high fat, higher protein, low carbohydrate type diet.
I don't investigate all the different types of meat, because I'm quite happy with the few that are commonly available. I like bacon and beef steak.
Yeah, but and I'm not saying that so much. I'm just saying that in terms of this, there does seem to be very much a vegan agenda.
Oh, I see. You're looking at yes.
Yeah, the meat is bad, and vegetables are good.
I think that the mistake that's often made is to think that if you've produced protein, you've produced meat. Meat is more than that. Of course, there's the fat, and in the fat are lots of nutrients that you're going to have to add by supplements if you're not eating real meat. So even if you're growing this meat, you're not growing all those other nutrients that were absorbed into the animal in its lifetime. Yeah, the best way to do that would be to, I guess, what you could do is make an actual animal. And the best way to do that is to have it given birth from another one. When it comes down to it, you need the real animal.
Yeah, I mean, this sounded a little bit like to me it smacked of Frankenstein or something like that. Maybe that's a bit extreme.
There's something missing. Yeah, let's just scroll down to this article. I don't. That's the strong arguments in favour of.
So they're saying basically their argument, and it's not saying that it's necessarily a bad argument. Saying that the animal welfare, you don't have to kill the animal, but I think that we shouldn't really be. I'm not sure that I disapprove of killing the animal, because I think that's a good use of the animal. But I think we do need good husbandry. We do need good animal welfare. We need to look after them.
I think that's a separate issue.
Chickens in factory farms and stuff like that. That's obviously not good. But that's as you say, it's a separate issue. It's not. It's a separate issue
in terms of the health and well-being of the animal. Yeah, you should look after animals. And in the Bible, if you're looking through the Bible's teaching, it mentions quite often about looking after the animals well. But it doesn't give any. It also
talks about killing them as well.
Yes, it gives no indication that they shouldn't be killed. In fact,
it says that they're
encouraged to kill them
to eat, and there are rules
to eat and to offer. There's sacrifices.
There's rules in the Old Testament about you can eat this type of meat, but you can't eat that type of meat. Like I don't remember the rules. You probably remember them better than I do. It's clear that you're supposed to eat the meat, though. Is all I'm saying.
Yes. So I think from a Christian point of view, there are lots of Christians who are vegetarians or vegans. I think it's up to them to come up with the argument, because I don't see it certainly from the Bible. It says here at the end of this first paragraph we've got on the screen now, the prospect of actual meat that doesn't involve killing is likely to have wide appeal. I don't get it. I don't see it, because in order to kill an animal, it has to be alive. All these animals, if you stopped eating them, would not exist at all. Is that better? Never to have existed is better than to have lived and died. That's an interesting perspective that I
Yeah.
simply don't hold to. That's rather weird.
But some people do subscribe to that
Yeah, yeah.
point of view. It's better not to have existed.
Is it not a noble life to have lived so that you can sustain others? So an animal, yes, its existence is to be eaten by humans. But isn't that a good thing? Isn't that a good reason to exist, for the good of others? I don't get the moral argument on it, apart from not looking after them well, which I
You've got to look
absolutely agree
after
with.
them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
absolutely. You've got to look after them well. You
But I
can't
would have thought
mistreat animals.
it does seem. I know it's subjective that you don't have eggs because you are not allergic. What's the word? You have an intolerance to them, isn't it?
Yes.
But eggs from free range hens do taste better. I mean, that's certainly,
Oh,
it
yeah,
seems that
that's our
way. And
experience. Yeah.
yeah. So it does. There is something in keeping them well, and it may be well be true of other animals as well. And if you don't let them eat naturally, and you're feeding them artificial food, I think that you're one step away, but again, missing out nutrients for the animal, and then you're going to eat them. But animals are just a brilliant way of concentrating all the nutrients that you want. So why?
And I think that there's a lot of these
Madness.
arguments about. I mean, there are some strange arguments about cows, causing climate change and stuff like that. But
Yes,
the science behind it it's complete nonsense. As
let's
far
put
as
it.
I can
Yes,
tell. I mean,
cows do not cause climate change,
there's a good guy that
at
I've
least
read.
not deliberately.
There's a good book that I've read by Charlie Spedding. It's called "Stop Feeding Us Lies," and he's quite an advocate of that. And he sort of explains the science behind it.
Yeah.
So it explains that it's not possible that they're producing greenhouse gases because on balance actually they don't. They because of
Overall,
overall, and also they help
zero.
protect the environment essentially
Well,
because because of their grazing is actually really good for the environment.
so this article is written in an interesting way. The paragraph I have here, there are also expected to be environmental benefits. Campaigners against climate change are concerned about meat production, which is blamed for as much as 15% of greenhouse gas emissions. And global demand for meat is expected to double by 2050 as developing countries increase consumption. Now, I mention this because then he's not making a claim that it is responsible for 15% of greenhouse gas emissions. It's blamed for it. You see, it's not proven. It's a claim that's made. I don't think there's much to support it at all. I can't see how you can get to that. But yeah, people do bang on about greenhouse gas emissions. I wonder how much people understand what is meant by it. I mean, I don't know. I guess it'd be interesting to see how people.
It'd be interesting to see where those sort of figures actually
if the
come
figures
from.
hold up, and if you to ask someone arguing that way, okay, what is the greenhouse effect? What are greenhouse gas emissions? What do you mean by that? And see whether there's an answer, because it doesn't seem to me to hold water. So yes, I guess it'd be interesting to try some of these. Let's scroll back up to the top. See the fight going on. It'd be interesting to try
I have
one
to
of
say
those.
that there's part of me just absolutely loves this as a story. In that I love the science behind it. I love the fact that it's possible to do that. It gives possibilities of being able to make meat for increasingly large demand. I mean, it's very, very expensive at the moment, and then there's lots of work needs to be done to make it cheaper. But there's another part of me just thinks, why? Why it's like reinventing the wheel. It's like it already exists. Why do you want to do it again? So I just think it's a bit of a
and there's also the claim
thing.
that when there's more and more poor people wanting meat, they won't be able to.
Yes, they won't be able to afford. Yeah. But
So,
the worrying thing for what I thought when I was sort of listening to it or reading the article myself was, it's almost like it could be forced upon us. That was the worry for me, is that it could be forced upon us, and that the ability to produce meat, or the farmers who producing meat more and more ostracized, almost like it will become recluses, and
Yes.
and if you want your bit of meat, you're going to have to go sort of underground to get the meats
Well,
from
yeah, I
the
was thinking of it going
suppliers.
another way with billionaires like Bill Gates, who are advocating for this, or in fact have either shares or actually own a company. I'm not sure what the position is that's producing this meat, this artificially grown meat. Well, they'll be right. I'm sure they'll feast on the finest steaks still, even when the majority of the poor are eating processed McNuggets. So it
Yeah.
seems to me it's going to add to the difference between the rich and the poor. It's going to make it worse.
Yeah, I mean, actually, that brings us on to actually our next article.
Oh,
Because I
on to
think
the next article. Yeah, let's call
I'm
that up.
pretty sure that I read a statistic in this in the book,
I'll
which
just
we
put up
just
the
wanted to
cover of
talk
the book for
about.
people to
The
see.
cover of the
Yeah,
book.
that's
Okay,
what
I'm pretty
this is
sure
what we're talking
this is
about.
where I got this particular bit of information from. But it was talking about the fact that during the this COVID year,
Yeah,
the super rich, have just got richer, and everybody else has got poorer. It was really, really. I just thought that was a really interesting fact, because I
yes,
guess that I hadn't really realized that. But yeah, it was this. There always was this this rich elite, as it were, and sort of everybody else. But those
but you
people
said
have got
yeah.
richer and richer, and the people who are poor have got. Just everybody else has got poorer. So there's more poor people, and there's going to be more poor people as a result of this COVID year and the
Mm,
aftermath
yeah.
of that. Yeah. So
Yes,
this
yes.
book
Yeah,
is called
I'll just, it's called A State of Affairs. Let me just read
yeah.
out this paragraph. I
Okay,
know
good.
that
Yeah,
you've virtually read it, haven't you? So this is from,
I've read most of it. Yeah,
yeah, this is from Pinto and Martin Publishers. Um,
it's Laura
so,
Dodsworth.
and the book's by, yes, the author's Laura Dodsworth. This is their little blurb about it. This is a book about fear of a virus, fear of death, fear of losing our jobs, our democracy, our human connections, our health, and our minds. It's also about how the government weaponized our fear against us, supposedly in our best interests, until we were one of the most frightened countries in the world. But why did the government deliberately frighten us? How has this affected us as individuals and as a country? Who is involved in the decision making that affects our lives? How are behavioral science and nudge theory being used to subliminally manipulate us? How does the media leverage fear? What are the real risks to our well-being? And then he goes on to say, before the official inquiry, Laura Dodsworth has explored it. So that's what we're talking about. So what did you find from this book?
Well, I mean, some of the stuff I guess I was already aware of, because I've been following the whole thing about COVID quite closely, really. But there were some things that were like quite astounding to me. So, well, one of so the basic premise of the book is that the pandemic struck, and obviously we didn't really know how serious it was going to be, but the government already had sort of well, they were concerned that people weren't taking it seriously enough, and so
Mm-hmm.
they put in a deliberate policy to scare us. And she talks about, I mean, she refers many times to Fright Night. Fright Night was, I don't know if you remember, the night when Boris Johnson had this press conference and told us that we were going to have to go into lockdown.
That she calls that Fright Night.
Yeah, she calls that Fright Night. So,
Yeah.
but there was this sort of deliberate policy to scare us, and it's almost like it worked too well. But so that kind of was sort of broadly aware of that, and I've heard other people say similar things. But what is interesting is that there were all these different organisations who do things like set up fake Twitter accounts, and those accounts are just to put out almost like fear mongering, essentially. Say, well, if you don't wear your mask, everybody's going to die. You're going to kill your granny. This type of thing. And even that phrase itself, killing granny, it's like, where did that come from?
Yeah.
So she's saying that there were like, well, I mean, people could read the book. I hope it doesn't ruin it for you, but you know, there were organizations like even the military who they've got jobs like basically just making accounts look like genuine accounts, and then
Right. Yes. Yes.
dissing at things that people say which are contrary to the narrative, essentially. So I just thought that was, well, it was interesting. I mean, I grew up in Cheltenham, and that's the home of the government communication headquarters. So perhaps I should be a bit more tuned in about all these things. But
Yeah.
I mean, not that people ever talk about their work, but it's kind of it's like being in a spy novel or something, you know. It's
Yes.
kind of, it's not. I didn't really expect that to be the case. I mean, I know that there are. I mean, everybody knows things like you expect the Russians or you expect the Chinese to have these things. I mean, there were things called bots. Some of them are real people who are paid, say, 50 cents to every time they tweet something or that gets a like or retweeted or whatever. And then there are like, you know, computers that generate the tweets, and you can tell sometimes because they were all exactly the same. Over and over again, but. So that was one thing which I thought was quite quite interesting.
Now, if I think I'm right in thinking this, the idea of nudge, which was it Malcolm Gladwell wrote the book about this, about nudge.
But yes, I was just
theory,
I was also trying to remember. I don't think, I'm not sure she doesn't. I don't think she says it's but about Malcolm Gladwell. It's
he
somebody
wrote
else.
about nudge theory, but
yes, he did write a book about it. Yeah.
Well, nudge theory is interesting. Way of it's sort of soft persuasion, isn't it? You make it easy for people to react in a certain way, and so if you apply pressure of fear, of course, then the natural inclination is to go against the fear. But I mean, that's maybe.
But there's lots of suggestion as well, you know.
Yes,
it isn't just it's very gentle, and it's almost in the background, and you almost don't realize it's going on. You know, it's like
and consistent.
A cup of tea would be really nice. You know, it's like it's that sort of thing. You know, so and then yes, I know. Really, I know.
I mean,
quite thirsty now.
I got a cup of coffee earlier today by making a joke. You know, I like you know, about COVID. I said,
oh yeah,
well, COVID or coffee, much the same to me. So I got made a cup of coffee. I wasn't really angling for it, but I always like a cup of coffee. But yes, the behavioural
there's
insights team.
There were there's all these behavioural teams, and even like on stage, it was there were behavioural scientists, but not virologists, for example.
I think that was the crucial omission. I don't know if people will know this, but SAGE, which is the advisory committee for the UK government on this response to the pandemic, they had on their panel behavioural psychologists. They also had epidemiologists who are basically the mathematicians. They provide the models for what might happen in different scenarios, but no actual virologists, at least initially. They may have brought them on later. But that's a big omission because you can have a model, but you need to have someone with knowledge of, well, this is what viruses actually do. This is what we really expect. That seems to be missing from earlier modeling. But that behavioral insights team committee, the nudge committee, it's sometimes called. That was set up by Cameron, so it's been around.
It's been.
So they've been using this.
I think
they're using this for some time.
I think that it also talks about stuff to do with terrorists and stuff like that.
Okay,
and I'm really sorry because I've read the book in bits and I've had a lot of the other things happening in my life, so I can't remember the exact things. Yes. But I think it was something to do with the terrorists anyway. That they were like nudging people to think in a certain way.
I haven't read the book yet, and I think we're encouraging people to read it and get back to us. Maybe we'll do a greater reflection on it in a later episode.
I think it's really good. But I'll tell you, I wanted to say something else about it. I want to just a couple of other things. So all the way through the book, she has these very short sections, which are just interviews with real people and saying, you know, this is the impact it had on me. You know, I stayed in my house for 6 months. I didn't want to go out. And even when I did go out, it was hard. I mean, there's a horrible story about a woman who she had she didn't want to, basically she didn't want to wear a mask because of some trauma that she'd previously had in her life, and then going to hospital and almost like being forced to wear a mask. It was just like, it was barbaric. It was really barbaric if you read the backstory. And there's those interviews that are kind of go through sort of, I think between every chapter, I think there's an interview. It brings life to the narrative that she's saying.
Yes, I think that's that's very good. I think the human element does help you. Well, it keeps your interest, but it helps you to visualize the actual effects, doesn't it? If you don't get those personal stories, you could be lost in the facts and the figures and the theories.
I mean, one of the things,
it looks like an interesting book.
She talks about also about the COVID almost becoming like a religion, and I thought that was interesting from a Christian perspective. Again, I've read so many different things. I can't remember if this is from the book or from something else I read, but yes, I think it's from the book. She talks about a cult who I think that I can't remember, maybe one of the end of the world cults, you know how it is, and it's like, and the end of the world is coming next Friday. It's a bit like that. Is it a Monty Python sketch? Will this wind be so mighty as to lay low?
Yes, it may be. I think it was originally Monty Python, though I always hear Rowan Atkinson saying that line.
Rowan Atkinson,
I think it was at some charity event. He took on that role.
Yeah, they all go anyway. The story in that sketch, they all go up a mountain because it's the end of the world, but then it doesn't happen. The end of the world doesn't happen, and they're like, well, same time next week, then, guys.
Yes. Which, sadly, it's quite realistic.
It's really realistic.
Actually, are you onto something interesting here? Because so many people, so many religions that grow people, really capture people's imagination, are apocalyptic. That is to say, they predict this terrible thing happening, the end's coming, the sky's falling, and that sort of thing. So I could see how it's captured people. Well, anyway, sorry.
So what basically saying? So those cults. So that happens. Okay, it's the end of the world is coming on Friday, and it doesn't happen. So what happens then? It doesn't. You would think any sane person will say, well, what's with this religion? It's stupid. It's wrong. But they don't. It almost it almost enhances their belief that their religion is right. Again, same time next week, then, guys. It's we're right. Even though we've been proved wrong, we're still right.
There's a very good reason for that. I think people do lose belief, but for those who keep their belief, it makes it stronger because you're having to fight against something that's attacked your belief. So it makes you, can make you stick to it stronger. But the strange thing about the state of affairs. Now, the book doesn't deal with the science of COVID-19 or the virus that causes it, does it?
No, she doesn't really go into that. She just goes into what the government did and the tactics that they used. So I just found that really, really. I mean, as I say, I feel it's a little bit like a spy novel. It's like, and they did this, and you're like, really?
Yes. Well, I think that's what's interesting about that is, say for a moment, I don't, but say for a moment, I just accept everything that the government's told me about COVID-19 as being true. Still, I would say the harm done by their tactics outweighs its effects. Because even taking the official figures on how many people have died due to COVID-19, even taking all that they've said about new variants being risky, these terrifying people into being scared to go out of their homes, into being worried about, going to the doctors and getting a diagnosis. This is going to be seen by the figures. I mean, it's already showing up. But for long term, you're going to see, well, now are you going to see suicides going up? Yes, you've already seen that. You can see undiagnosed cancer and heart complaints, the deaths due to that going up. And that sort of thing, particularly I'm thinking of, cancers not being treated, that's going to result in a bulge in deaths going forward, isn't it? So how do you stop? You need to stop the fear, and I don't think they've got a way to do that.
That was what she said. There's no end game.
How do you turn off the fear? How do you turn off fear?
You can't turn off the fear because the people who are really scared remain scared, and And it's a bit like we talked about the passage from Habakkuk last week, and saying really we don't need to fear because we've got God on our side. We
Yes.
really can trust in God, but
Yes.
not everybody believes in God, and they're
Yeah.
and they're almost like now trapped. There are people who they talked about people who say that almost became agoraphobic, and I
Yeah.
can
Yeah. Oh, I
completely
think that's true.
understand
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there are people who are not just
Uh,
nearly, but really have become agoraphobic.
yes. The state of fear. Okay, it's a state with fear, but we're in a state of fear. I guess is the
Yeah,
point.
so
But I mean,
it's a
but some people have different
trouble.
attitudes. Uh, it's just thinking back. I think I said this to you before. I've often been at odds with people I've known over scares that have been on, like you mustn't eat eggs because you might get salmonella. Well, there is some truth in it, and the problem with
Mad
mad
cow
cow
disease
disease, yes,
and swine flu.
that's why and lots of things that appear to be very scary and weren't. And I was like, no, you don't need to be scared. Yeah, there's reasonable things you can do, but there's no need to fear. No, no. Yes, I'm going to keep eating beef burgers, this sort of thing. But on those occasions, I was arguing what the government was arguing. That's what they were saying. But
Oh,
this
yeah,
time, you see what I mean?
yeah,
This time, it's the
yeah.
government on the side of the
Yeah,
panic.
yeah, you're right. In previous problems, I mean, the mad cow disease is probably the best example.
Yeah,
The government have been sort of trying to quell
they'll be trying to calm people down.
calm people down. I mean, was it that famous minister giving his daughter a beef burger?
Yeah,
Who was that? I can't remember. Was it Gummer or somebody? I can't remember.
Gummer. Yes, I
Uh,
think Gummer. Yes.
um,
Yeah,
anyway,
I can't remember his first name.
it's just completely different.
Selwyn.
It's
Selwyn Gummer.
yeah. I think
Mm,
could
mm,
we could be wrong. Could be
mm.
completely somebody completely
Anyway,
different.
a minister,
But
a government minister,
a
did
government
that.
minister fed his daughter a beef burger in front of the cameras, and that was a big thing, saying it's not dangerous, it's not dangerous.
Yes.
But here it's completely the opposite. It's like
Yeah.
it's really really dangerous, guys. It's you're gonna 500,000 people are
But
gonna
they didn't.
die, and it's not.
Before we leave this discussion, I'll just go back a bit to before. What was it called? Fright Night. Before that, before they started on this track, May the 23rd. March the 23rd, 2020. Before that, there was a different approach. The government was telling us not to be scared of it, and in fact, the Prime Minister went round and shook hands with everyone, in a ward in a hospital where there was known to be COVID-19, and he did that to show that this was the way to get through it, what's sometimes called herd immunity. And if they had followed that policy, and so people wouldn't have been scared, you try and you protect people
Yes, and the
in
economy
nursing home,
wouldn't
protect
have
the
been.
vulnerable, you would have had plenty of beds for people who were elderly and weak and suffering, to give them ICU care, to give them the intensive care they need, and everyone else would have got on with their lives. They might have caught COVID-19, but almost everyone wouldn't have died of it, which is still what happened. Almost, the survival rate is well over 99%, and that's if you catch it. So
Yeah.
it really is a minor disease from that point of view. Of course, when you're talking about it affecting such huge numbers, there's a significant number of deaths, but as a percentage, it's a very small number. I know that she wasn't dealing with that side of it, but I think that's important if
But
you
she
overall
did.
look at it.
She
Does she
taught.
deal
She
with
taught. No. She doesn't really deal with that. But what I thought
it?
you
Yeah.
were going to say was something slightly different.
Yes.
You said that before that announcement by Boris
Yes.
Johnson, they had one policy, and
Yes.
then it seemed that they switched. Now she talks quite a bit near the beginning of the book about that speech by the Prime Minister on that evening,
Yes.
and his whole body language and the sort of tone of it. He seemed sort of worried in some way. He didn't seem his
Well,
normal
yeah, I know.
self.
It seemed to me, I mean, I know some politicians are good actors, but he seemed pretty genuine. He seemed like he was scared.
Yes, but so I mean, she doesn't really go into this, but what changed is all I say. What changed? Why was he? Why was he scared? Was he scared because he thought it was an unpopular policy and is somebody that likes to be popular? Was he scared because somebody had forced him to
What was it?
do that?
Yeah, what was it?
Or
Neil He was convinced by Neil Ferguson's
was he convinced by that
ridiculous,
500,000 people
idiotic
would,
predictions. Yeah,
yeah,
I mean,
I
they
don't
thought
know. It was
even
strange.
with those measures in place, he was still talking huge numbers, well above what actually happened, and yet people still listen to it. He's made predictions before and got them completely wrong. He was the one who caused the foot and mouth disease. Now, although that affects animals, not humans, but thousands and thousands of healthy animals were killed because of his projections, which were way over the mark. So he'd been wrong before. Why were they listening to him? So was he really convinced by Neil Ferguson? Or, as you say, we can't possibly know this. Did someone have a word? I mean,
yeah, it was always kind of had that ring about it, didn't it?
Shady dealings.
I don't know. I just don't know. I can't fathom that.
By their very nature, such an act, if it happened,
yeah.
we'll never know.
Many people have analysed. She said that many people have analysed, his sort of body language and that speech. So psychologists looked at it, and it was a bit weird. Yeah. So
yes,
anyway, I just think
it was very strange.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting book. I mean, it doesn't really matter whether what you think, what your views on COVID are. Whether you think we should all be locked down and masked up, and whether you think we should all be whatever. I just think people will find it an interesting book to read, because there's stuff in there that I had no idea really that was going on, especially this sort of lots of organizations behind the scene sort of doing sort of behavioral science on us as a population, and that's I don't feel that happy about that, to be honest. I mean, I've lived in China. I didn't appreciate being spied on then, and I don't appreciate being spied on in my own country either.
Yeah, I was just trying to put fear in the sense. Yeah, that was it.
Oh, okay.
It's about fear. Yes, but we have an antidote to that, and one of the things we try to do on this show that we're putting on here is look at things from a Christian point of view and try and end with a thought from the Bible. Here is the Lord's answer to the issues. This is Psalm 20, verse 1. May the Lord answer you in the day of trouble. So it's interesting, very specific, that it's may the Lord answer you, not all time, we want the Lord to answer us, but in the day of trouble, looking for something very specific. Now, these psalms were either written by King David in the Old Testament, or written for him by people inspired by what his experiences were, and he had a lot of trouble.
Yes.
He ended up being.
He wanted. I mean, people were trying. Saul was trying to kill him half the time.
Yeah. Yes. Well, he'd been appointed king by God. It says in the Bible, but there was already a king, and he wasn't very happy about it. And he was fleeing for his life. Later, he was
hiding in caves and stuff.
Yeah. And later, there was a rebellion against him, and his own son rebelled against him, and his son was killed. And there's lots of difficulties in his life in the day of trouble. And this phrase, "a day of trouble" or "the day of the Lord," is often used throughout Scripture. It doesn't necessarily mean the end of the world or a massive judgment day, but it tends to mean God coming in judgment, or there being this big day of trouble coming. Of course, God allowing it to happen or orchestrating it to happen. So when you have the day of trouble, the person that you turn to is the Lord. And we've had over a year of trouble.
Yes, more than one day, 365 days or more of trouble.
So fear, I think we can rest assured that if we're trusting in God, so if you've got that belief and faith in the Lord, the God who we know in the Bible, the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, who sends his Holy Spirit to us, that God, that Lord, if we're trusting in him, we can rest assured that he is there and he's going to answer us if we talk to him and pray to him. And especially because it's talking about in this day of trouble. The whole verse is actually, may the Lord answer you in the day of trouble. May the name of the God of Jacob protect you. So there's the name of God is like his reputation. So you remember that he's answered prayers in the past, but also use his name, talk to Jesus. The Lord, the word Lord that's put there in that Bible verse is put in the place of the name of God. Yahweh, we think it's pronounced, but Yahweh, Lord, Jesus, talk to him, this particular God. and he's going to answer you. Speak his name. So it's this God, the name of God. Here it says the name of the God of Jacob, talking back to one of the early patriarchs of the Jewish faith. The name of the God of Jacob will keep you secure. That's the idea, security. So if there's fear, what you're looking for is safety. Ultimate safety is from trusting in God. So call on his name rather than being fearful and not leaving the house or whatever it is that's affecting you. It may not be affecting you that way, but whatever it is, the Lord will answer you. So that's our verse for the day. Any thoughts on it?
No, I think you're right. I think we just kind of need to live. What somebody said is if the fear of dying shouldn't stop you living, or something like that.
Yes.
I wasn't very. I can't remember things very well. I think that's what it was. Anyway, and I thought that's quite good, because if we just live in fear and we don't, want to go out or want to do anything, then it's not really living, is it? So I think that we need to live, and we need to, I just think as today I don't know whether when people will be listening to this today in the UK, and I think somewhere other places in the world, there was a partial eclipse of the sun, and I think that is amazing. I love. I mean, we've seen a total eclipse of the sun, but it was just a little bit of the sun, eaten out like a Pac-Man or whatever, eating the little corner out of the sun, but I think so. Wow, that is amazing. The things that are out there, the nature, just the sun, the moon, the stars, all of these things that God has created. And we just got to get out and enjoy them. I just think
get out to meet people.
Have a laugh.
Go out and eat your relatives and hug food, or is it whatever?
No. Yeah. Well, I don't know. I don't want to eat my relatives, actually. I don't know.
Well, it might be better than fake McNuggets.
I might hug my food, but not the fake nuggets.
Yeah, but yes, get out and live your life. There's always risk in anything. The risk due to this disease is really, really low. But anyway, you've got to take some risks, or you're not going to live your life. Trusting in God, I think, helps you to take risks, but also it puts a different perspective.
Well, yes, you don't want to take stupid risks. I would never advocate taking stupid risks.
No, but I think if you cross the road, that sort of thing.
You trust, if you're trusting in God, maybe you're almost like stepping out, doing something that maybe seems a bit crazy, but you feel that that's what God has asked you to do, then you do it, and it may seem a bit risky, like you might not have enough money, or it might be going somewhere dangerous or whatever. But if that's what you think God's told you to do, you should just do it. So you do end up becoming a bit of a risk taker. We ourselves have done some, what I would say, slightly crazy things. But man, it's always been amazing. God's always been in it, and it's definitely worth it. Yeah.
So I guess that's all for this week. Remember to leave a comment. I'd really like you to say what verse from the Bible gets you through difficult times. Leave a comment below, and I'll be able to see if you've watched this through to the end. But that's I guess that's all from us for this time. But come back to this channel, subscribe, set notifications, and you'll know when the new video comes out. And catch you next week. Bye.
Bye.